Guys, welcome back to my studio. This tutorial will be a little bit scary. Well, no, not really, but it will be Halloween themed tutorial. I will show you how to draw a scene with the cemetery and some scary zombies. So for this tutorial, you will only need a piece of paper and a pencil. You can use a graphite pencil or you can use a coloring pencil. So guys, those of you who are watching my videos and think, oh no, I need to try this but I don't have the materials, no more excuses. You have to try this. You don't even need an eraser. It's that simple. Okay, so if you're ready to learn and relax, let's go. I would like to make a little, almost like a frame, give a little border for my artwork. But rather than using a ruler, which you can do if you'd like, I would like to do it by hand because I quite like having a little bit of unevenness. And now once we've done that, we need to sketch through the idea. What I'm doing is I'm using a few different images to create the artwork that I'd like to see at the end, and I suggest that you do the same. Now to start with, I'm going to mark some of the main characters or features in this composition. This whole thing is happening in the graveyard, so I'm going to mark some crosses. So this is a really sort of a Walking Dead kind of a case scenario. Maybe some old gravestones that are going, a little bit wobbly and so on. Some of these things will be a little bit closer and some a bit further away, but that will become more visible once we start shading. Now I also want to put a couple of sort of a zombie-like characters. It's not going to be very clear who they are or what they're doing, but it will be quite interesting to have some of those in as well. Now if any of you are interested in how to draw people, please check out some of my videos on my Patreon page, because I have a whole series of videos on portraits and things like that. Now the positioning of the zombies, their body language is a bit different from regular people, just because of the posture and how they might stand, maybe hands that are swinging a bit too much, maybe a little bit of that crookedness, in the shoulder line there. Those are the things that are going to make these people look a little bit scarier than your normal, regular people. Okay, now it's time to start shading. I want it to be kind of like a real late evening or darkness kind of a situation. I'm just going to shade a little bit and bring a little bit of the darkness into the sky. Now I will show you a little trick. What you can do is you can just grab a paper towel, wrap it around your finger. See, I've got it folded over in 2 layers. Wrap it around your finger like that and give it a quick little smudge. Now it's not going to smudge this all the way through so that you don't see any lines, but it will help you to prepare that sort of a really foggy kind of a very muddy sort of a look to your pencil lines. And the color that you would have chosen, like for example I'm using a dark blue, for example if you're using a dark red, it would come through a little bit stronger when you do that. So you see, I haven't smudged everything out, but it created a really sort of give it a bit of a softening effect. Now I'm going to carry on shading. And just in some areas I'm going to darken it, and some I'm going to keep it a little bit lighter. And you can go over the people, you know, the zombies and the gravestones somewhat, because these areas will be darker in the end. Just as long as you can see a little bit of the outline, that's all you really need. And another once over with a tissue paper. I'm going to stop working on the backdrop on the sky at this stage. Later on we might decide to make it a little bit darker, but I'll just leave it until then for now. Next step is to start working on everything that's going darker. For this composition I'm actually just going to be going down and down and down. And let's have a look at some of the crosses that were sketched before. So I can see some here. You guys probably can't see any because it's really faint, but I can still see some. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm gonna just the same way as I did with the sky. I'm just going to go a little bit darker over some of these. And remember, here we've got aerial perspective at work, which means things that are closer to us will be a little bit darker, and things that are further away from us will be a little bit lighter and a little bit less contrasted. So if this cross here appears to be this darkness, and then the cross further away will be much softer in shade. And if you want to pull this one closer, you can make it darker. Create more of the sharpness on the outline as well. So you see, the darker you make it, the closer it seems to appear. So now if you compare this and this definitely looks like it's in the fog somewhere far away. And this one's much closer. But the darker you make this, the more of that effect, bringing it closer, you create. Next, let's move on to the gravestone. What I also want to do is I want to create that sort of a grass and trees kind of a look as well. So I want to add some of that while I'm going along with the sort of a mid area of the artwork. And exactly the same thing with the grass and the trees. The darker and more contrasted they are, the more they will appear to be closer to the picture plane. A tree in the distance. And remember, the more detail you will be adding, the closer this tree will appear. So if I want it to be quite far away, I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so next I'm going to move on to these gravestones and more crosses. So same thing as here, the darker you make them, the closer they appear. So you see how by making this gravestone darker than this one appears much closer to you instantly. It's a very easy trick, but many people find that they struggle with making things look closer and further away. So in this specific situation, this is what you need to look for. Some plants. Another interesting thing to think of when creating artworks is that sometimes you just need to give a little sort of a example of what something is, and then your eye and your brain just tend to finish this composition for you. So by just putting little sort of twigs and spots here, when the viewer would look at this, they would instantly think that it is a bush or leaves or something of that sort. And so here I already want to put in someone that, like perhaps it's a person or a zombie or something, just sort of a maybe not kind of a situation. It's not very clear, and that's the scariest part. I don't know if you've noticed that in horror movies, the scariest parts are the ones where you just don't know what's behind the door. Once the door opens, there might be nothing there, but it's that suspense, you know, and they put the scary music in as well, and it's just wow. Okay, so here I want to add some more plants in the distance, some twigs with leaves or something of the sort, and I want this to be quite far away. Another cross. And another cross. Now in the comments, guys, can you let me know what are the things that you find the scariest or that scare you? And I don't mean like the future of our planet, that sort of thing. I mean more like horror movie stuff, you know, like are you scared of killers running around with I don't know, swords or something, you know, like, or is it, I don't know, something like that, where, you know, the world is filled with zombies, or is it vampires? What is it? If there is something, I know a lot of people as children find many things a little bit uneasy and scary, but as people grow up, it sort of moves away to the second plane, and you know, we sort of see that there are more problems in the world that are scarier than imaginary characters. But still, I would be really interested to know what were the things that were quite scary that you found maybe a little bit uneasy, or what is it? I sort of personally went through different stages of being scared of different things, and of course I grew up in Russia, so there were a lot of Russian sort of a folklore, you know, the Baba Yaga and things like that that I was frightened of as a child. But you know, as you get older, then, you know, other things tend to be scarier. So now I'm going to show you something else here. So see how I've got this gravestone, but things that are closer, like for example some little grassy pits, are a little bit darker. So I'm gonna go into the darker tone already. Now there'll be more and more darkness as we keep coming down, and things will start moving to the foreground, but this is just a little bit through here. And I would also, I think I had another cross marked through there before. Just gonna pop that in there. So you can definitely see that this is asymmetry. Now before we go any further, I'm going to go back to my tissue, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a smudge. Now you don't want to smudge it completely, like we did quite a bit of smudging with the sky. Here you kind of want to smudge every object separately. So here we are working on the tree. Now a little bit on the grass. Now I'm going to fold it a little bit more and work on cross. smudging it a little bit into the background is inevitable, but there's nothing wrong with it to do this at this stage now. So now we've got, we had the sky as a backdrop. Now we've got some of the background and we're moving on to the midground here. So now things are going to start getting darker and darker. And I would like to add more of those grassy bits, but just with a little bit more contrast and a little bit more darkness. There will still be some crosses, some vegetation. You can add a bit more detail, don't have to, but it's just one of those things where you can if you want to. You can make it a little bit more sort of eerie, create that realistic kind of a look of what it might be like if you go into a cemetery on Halloween. Now let's look at the zombies, because the zombies are sort of in that midground, but a little bit closer than the background, but not as close as the foreground. So it's a good time to do them now, especially this one. This one's a bit further away than that one. So here we've got a person that's perhaps a zombie. Now you want to create some features that are recognizable, human features, but you don't want to get into detail because it is nighttime. It is far away. So you kind of want to give that full direction to the arm, but not in a way that you can see all the fingers, if you know what I mean. So a little bit of it, just a marking of it that's showing through. If you are guys enjoying this video, make sure to check out my Patreon page, where for just $8 a month you can support my channel and also get lots of new videos for yourself to watch. Tutorials on face structure, on color theory, there's all sorts of stuff over there, so you might find some of those things interesting. And now let's go back to the video. And remember, they will not be standing in the very sort of usual poses. They'll have, sort of uneven shoulders and things like that. Or at least this is how they're portrayed in the movies and, places like that. So merge them a little bit with the grass. Do you guys still watch The Walking Dead? Or has it sort of lost its appeal for you? Because this is kind of very much that case scenario, isn't it? The zombies and the cemeteries and things like that. So we'll give this one a funny head direction. So rather than doing eyes properly, because they're far away, because it's sort of a dark, we just going to mark the sort of eye socket area, mouth and the nose, maybe a bit more shadow on that side of the face, and some crazy hair. So remember, the more contrast we have in the object, the closer it looks to us. We don't want to give too much detail to the clothing as well, but you do want to give that sort of a look that the clothing gets, you know, when it's on a human body. Okay, if you're drawing, you can actually stop around this level, but I just thought since we're doing the whole figure, I might as well finish zombie person. But yeah, you can actually stop here, and then when we're doing the foreground, you can finish this off. It's up to you. It just depends on what's your preferred style of working. My personal one is that once I start something, I have to kind of like a dog with a bone situation. I need to finish things up. So now here we can start getting a little bit darker with the grass and any kind of vegetation that's growing. I actually feel like I want to put another sort of a thing there that might look like a person. I don't know, I just want I want to create that sort of a look where at first it looks like there's just two of them, but then when you look closer you can see that there's a whole bunch of them there. Just a little bit more of the crazy vegetation. Now at any stage, if you feel that you need to sharpen your pencil, do that. My one's getting close to that point. Now as we come to the foreground, it's not so much about what you're making darker, because it's going to be really, really dark on the foreground. It's more about the highlights that you leave, because if, for example, there's a line and it's quite light, it means that there's something there, maybe a thing from the cross or something like that, that is catching quite a bit of light. So just remember that now it's turning away from making it darker to make it look closer to leaving some strategic highlights. Now here I want to create these, as I said before, strategically placed highlights. So here I'm trying to create quite a bit of contrast so that these objects look very close, and you will see in a minute what this effect does. You see how instantly that is just so close. It appears even closer than this, and I haven't even made it as dark as it needs to be. Now creating a little bit more of that grassy stuff in the front. Now here at the front I want to also darken this corner like this. Just I think that will create that sort of interesting look into the composition and will really take you into that symmetry. But I also don't want to cut off this guy as well, because him sort of seeing that there isn't anything between you and the, you know, this creepy person makes it a little bit scary as well. So a little bit blunt here. And you see, leaving that sort of area a little bit lighter almost makes it look like there's like a trail. But it's not really a trail, it's kind of a trail for the gaze. So when the person is looking at the artwork, this is what they're going to see first. Just some more details in vegetation. And now I'm going to go back into smudging. What I'm going to do is, because we've smudged the sky, then we've smudged the sort of background crosses and things like that, I'm going to kind of try and blend it a little bit together. Now remember, if you are using a graphite pencil, those ones blend much easier. So I would not suggest that you go all in and just really smudge out of control, because then you'll just have everything really hazy, which to be honest can be a cool look as well if that's what you want to create. But for this one I'm just going to go over this just a little bit softer, just to marry this with this a little bit. And then I'm not going to smudge the people too much. You know, I want to have a little bit more definition. And then once that is done, I'm just going to go over and darken the areas that I think should still be a little bit darker. And as I said, you know, that sort of a edge where you don't have a sharp ruler, you know, it sort of it gives it a really special sort of a feeling, especially a work that's themed like that. It makes it appear more like it's part of a movie or a story or something like that. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over some of the areas that I want to darken even more. Maybe give just a little bit more definition to that person, zombie person. Okay, so here is the finished product. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you've learned how to create, you know, the feeling of objects being in the distance and close up as well, and to create that gradient. And I also hope that you can see how sometimes you don't even need many materials to create an artwork. Like here, we pretty much just used a piece of paper and the pencil. We didn't use any special smudge sticks or tools or anything like this. We just used a piece of paper, and yeah, so you can get really interesting results even if you are limited in terms of materials. So I hope you give it a go, because I'm pretty sure you all have things that we used. And I also would like to say a big thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who are supporting this channel, who are helping me to get materials and equipment and things like that. So thank you guys so much for your help. And if you haven't done it so far, please go over there and check out the Patreon page, because you might find something very useful for yourself over there. And for now, guys, I'll see you next time, and thank you so much for drawing with me.